Hey everybody, Allie Bloyd here, and today I want to talk about how to land high-profile speaking gigs. So I just got back from speaking at Traffic and Conversion Summit this past week, and the experience was absolutely amazing. But I've had so many people asking me, how am I able to land these high-profile speaking gigs, such as Traffic and Conversion Summit, Social Media Marketing World, and more? And the truth is, there isn't some magic to it. It's really just a series of very practical steps that every single person can take if they would like to land speaking gigs or educational engagements within their industry, whether that's the marketing industry or another industry that they serve. So the very first step is always to be putting out content for yourself. If you expect someone to hire you to speak, they're going to want to see an example of what you talk about, of how you explain things, of what your energy is like. And if you've never actually had a speaking gig before, you need to do this through your own content. So that was the very first step that I took when I started to get speaking gigs or podcast interviews or anything that was really allowing me to educate others in my industry on the topics of expertise that I had. So if you have not been putting out content, whether that's audio or video, you really need to use that as your first step. The second thing that I'd encourage all of you to do is to start building relationships within your industry. So I have always made a point to reach out to people in the industry that I admire, people that I listen to, people that I look up to, and tell them how much I love their content, to start conversations, to ask questions. And truthfully, if you want to be able to engage with somebody about things that they're talking about, you have to be consuming their content. So if you expect to just reach out to someone that you know does a podcast or has a YouTube show or a video series or has an event, you need to actually listen to the content that they put out. That's going to allow you to have more real, more productive, more authentic conversations with them. The next thing I would say is don't reach out to people with the expectation of getting something in return. This is a really big problem, especially in the marketing industry. I get so many messages per day, so many emails per day, and they're all basically a carbon copy of one another. There's very little creativity, but the biggest thing, even if the message may be original, is that all they're doing is asking me for something. They're asking me for business. They're asking me for advice. They're asking me for something that's going to benefit them. Truthfully, I don't respond to any of those messages. There are messages, however, that I get where I can tell people are genuinely trying to start a conversation with me, and I will respond to those messages. When I feel like there's some ulterior motive behind the message, sometimes I may not respond, but sometimes I will respond just to see if I'm right or not. And truthfully, too many times they'll start off with, "Hey, how's it going? Love what you're doing." And then of course, the next message that comes is a pitch about how I can work with them or how I can buy from them or something that benefits them. Then there's another type of message that I get that just says, "Hey." Well, I might say, "Hey" back, but then there's very little that comes after, or "How are you?" And I'll say, "Great, how are you?" And then they'll basically just start over. "Hey, how are you? Hi, Allie, how are you?" The truth is, if you're going to be reaching out to people, if you're trying to develop relationships with people, you need to be able to hold a conversation with them. And the easiest way to hold a conversation with a content creator or a speaker or someone who you respect in the industry is to actually know what they're doing, know what they talk about, and be able to have a genuine conversation about those things. So that is step number one, to listen to the content, to engage with their content, and create content on your own. But then step two is to go out of your way to start real conversations with those people, not something where you are expecting them to provide you with a benefit. I would even say offer them a benefit first. It does not have to be something that involves working together or having them pay you for something or having you featured in something. It could be as simple as saying, hey, I love this or that or the other, and this would be a great way that you could use that in the future. I think that would be a big benefit. Or, hey, I know somebody in the industry that I think that you would really hit it off with. I'd love to connect the two of you. Whatever it is, you just have to be genuine because people can smell inauthentic communication from a mile away, especially people who do get a large number of messages or emails. They're not going to take time to respond to those that seem like a copy and paste of something 100 other people are going to be getting. So if you are going to be reaching out to people, make sure that you do it more than once. Continue to start conversations with them. That is how you build real relationships. I have built so many great relationships online only with people that I have never met, but it's not just about me liking something online or sending them one message. It's about continued engagement with that person, supporting that person when they have something great going on, answering questions when they're asking questions in their posts or content. You really want to be genuine and you want to show them, hey, I love what you're doing. I am following you for a reason and I am happy to engage with the content that you're putting out. So that can put you on someone's radar very, very easily. But truthfully, if you can start to establish just a couple of solid relationships in the industry, you will really be surprised at how that can be the catalyst for so much more. So for instance, one of the first big speaking engagements, I'll call it, that I ever got was on the Perpetual Traffic podcast. So Molly Pittman was the host of that podcast, and she's actually from my state. So I live in Kentucky. She lived in Kentucky. She was a former bartender. I was a former bartender. And my first engagement with her was actually on her paid ad. I said, hey, Molly, I'm a fellow Kentuckian here, former bartender just like you. I love what you're doing. So great to see you rising in the industry. So I was being genuine about that. I had zero knowledge that that would ever go somewhere else. Well, what do you know? The next thing, she followed me and she liked my business page. And so I took the next step and I sent her a personal message and started a real conversation where we talked about life and we talked about business and we talked about things we had going on. And sooner rather than later, she invited me to share one of my case studies on the Perpetual Traffic podcast. So this is one of the top 10 podcasts in marketing in the world. So it was a huge opportunity for me. But I was not invited to that podcast without her seeing some of the content I'd already been putting out first. People who have a show or have a podcast or have a speaking event, they want to make sure that the people that they're inviting to come on those things are going to be a benefit to their audience. That is the only reason that they're going to invite someone to do something like that. So you have to make sure that the content you're putting out is value-based and that someone could look at that and say, wow, yeah, this person has insights that I believe my audience could really benefit from. So after the Perpetual Traffic podcast opportunity, I had a stronger relationship with Molly. We really had a great conversation before, during, and after the podcast. And that was the start of a friendship for the two of us. But now that I had this really big podcast out there, I knew that other people in the industry were likely going to hear that. So what I did was I listened to another big podcast called the Social Media Marketing Podcast. A lot of you probably know that podcast. That was one that I'd listened to for years and had been instrumental in me learning new strategies and exploring new platforms and really just developing my growth as a marketer over the years. So on the podcast, Mike Stelzner, the host, he always said, hey, if you want to reach out to me, I'm at Stelzner on Instagram. So he was telling us, listening to the podcast, the platform that he preferred to be reached out to on. So what did I do? I sent him a message on Instagram. I did not say, hey, Mike, I'd love it if I could be on your podcast. I started responding to the recent podcast that he was putting out, telling him my feedback. So he had also had somebody on his podcast not long after my Perpetual traffic interview. There was someone I had worked with, and I said, hey, I loved your interview with so-and-so. I've actually worked with that company. They're a great company. It's awesome for you to feature them. Really great episode. So we just continued to talk back and forth. And eventually I said, hey, I speak on local marketing, and I would absolutely love the opportunity to talk to your audience about that on the podcast if you're ever looking for someone who focuses on that topic, knowing that podcasts are usually on a variety of topics, different types of marketing, and that what I speak on is not necessarily something that they're going to want on the podcast every single week. It's something that they're going to be seeking out intentionally. So I planted the seed. I said, hey, if you want to hear some of the things that I talk about, you can listen to my episode on perpetual traffic not too long ago. Ironically, he said, yeah, I absolutely listened to that episode. I loved it. I thought you were awesome on it, and I would definitely like to have you on the podcast. We've done an episode on local marketing not too long ago, but when we need another speaker on that topic, I'll definitely reach out. So what do you know? I was reached out to maybe just a month or two later about getting scheduled for that podcast. So a couple of things from that story that I want you to take away is, number one, you have to actively reach out to people. And if they're telling you how they want you to reach out to them, reach out to them in that format. That likely means it's a place where there's less clutter. They have more of an opportunity to get that message and to hear from you. The next thing is, you need to build on the opportunities that you're presented with. So I now had a really big podcast out that I could use as a reference for other people so that they could hear the types of content that I would be able to provide their audience with. So I used it as something to say, hey, if you want to know what I would be like as a guest speaker on your podcast, this is something that you can listen to. So when I was on the social media marketing podcast, that was a great opportunity as well. But my episode was essentially an audition. I did not know that at the time, but I was told after the fact. So I was able to have a really great, really thought-provoking, insightful episode. And after the fact, I was asked if I'd be interested in being a teacher for the Social Media Marketing Society, which is done through Social Media Examiner. And I was also asked if I would like to be a speaker at Social Media Marketing World. So this was one of my first big speaking opportunities. I'd done smaller events for a long time, but this was really a huge opportunity for me in the marketing industry as a whole to get on stage. So again, one podcast episode turned into another podcast episode, which turned into a training opportunity, which turned into a big speaking gig, which has led to me being on that podcast several times. It's led to me being on other really large podcasts, but that speaking opportunity at Social Media Marketing World was also instrumental in me developing more relationships. So once you start to get some of these opportunities, it's really easy to network with other people in the industry that are doing incredible things, that have a lot of knowledge, but most importantly, you're able to network with them in a very personal way. You're able to become friends with them, really show them what it is you talk about, what it is you are able to share with audiences, and who you are as a person. And when people know, like, and trust you, they're absolutely going to be willing to refer you to other opportunities in the future. They're also going to be willing to come on your podcast or do a live video show with you. So many different things really just stems from relationships. But again, if you go back to the very first opportunity, it was because I had already been putting content out there. I was already creating videos. Even when I didn't have a huge audience, I was sharing my knowledge and trying to provide value. So if you are not yet creating content and sharing value, even if you don't have a huge audience to share it with, you could potentially be missing out on big opportunities that are going to come in the future as a result of that. So the next thing that I was able to do outside of building those relationships, which again has been instrumental in me continuing to get podcast opportunities, speaking gigs, magazine features, different things like that. And so coaching has also been a really big thing for me. So as a business owner, for the longest time, I never thought that I needed a coach. I am very independent. I am very self-motivated and driven. And so I didn't really think that that was something that would benefit me tremendously. I always knew that if I had a goal, I would work towards that goal. I was going to put in the work. I didn't need somebody else telling me to do it. However, over time, I realized that there are simply things within the business space that I either don't enjoy doing or that other people have already done. So I can really expedite the time that it would take me to implement those things myself by taking their proven processes and systems and resources and utilizing them myself. So once I hired my first coach, it really just blew my mind and changed the way that I thought about the coaching industry. So the first coach that I hired was James Smiley, who ironically is now a good friend of mine. We're in a Bible study together. But that opportunity allowed him to get to know me a lot better, and also was able to introduce me to other people in the industry, really get me kind of front and center at other events where I was going to be around people that were pretty high up in the industry, and really just start to build a presence there as a person who they knew, someone they knew my name, they knew what I was doing, and really allows you to build on your reputation and your credentials in the industry a lot faster. So after working with James, I hired another coach that was a little bit more niche to what I was doing. And then ultimately I hired another coach who I am with today. Again, all helped me with different things throughout the course of my business. And the coach that I'm working with now, he definitely has a lot of really great relationships in the industry. He's done a lot of big speaking gigs. He's spoken at Traffic and Conversion Summit. And so he has a lot of credibility in terms of people trusting his judgment and his recommendations. So when the opportunity came for me to speak at Traffic and Conversion Summit, my coach was able to vouch for me. He was able to say, yeah, this is a person that's in my program. She's doing amazing things. She's a great speaker. This is definitely someone that you should be looking at. So once that opportunity came up, it was not a done deal. Even though I had my foot in the door, I still had to be someone that they believed could provide value to the audience and that would be able to speak on things that they needed to be presented. So everybody in the industry has their own topics that they focus on. You really need to be able to have a niche set of topics that you can present on. And ideally, it's going to be more than one topic that you can speak on. If you're just a one-trick pony, you might get one opportunity, but they're really not going to be able to invite you back because they don't want to hear the same presentation over and over again. So I have really made it a priority to not give the same presentation twice. There's so many different angles, so many different things that I can talk about. And so I will create a unique presentation for every single speaking event that I do. And I really don't repeat those very frequently. It's not to say that I can't repurpose them in the future, but I want to make sure that people know that if you're looking for a speaker, if you're looking for a guest, and maybe you already had a certain topic or you already have spots filled that are speaking on certain things, I can still be a presenter because I have a wide range of topics that I can talk about. So I was able to really present to them a ton of topics that I was qualified to speak on and give them examples of where they could hear me speaking on certain topics. So again, past podcast episodes, this podcast they can listen to, the videos I do on YouTube, the talk shows and the YouTube shows that I'm a guest on. So a lot of different things that they could look at to say, yes, this person is a great speaker, they're a great communicator, and they also do have a lot of different topics. So we can pick and choose what the best topic for them is going to be based on our event or our show. So they actually encouraged me in a certain direction in terms of the topic they wanted me to speak on, because they felt like it would be a great fit in relation to the other presenters that they had and the other topics that were going to be covered. So again, make sure that you are continuing to grow in your base of knowledge so that you can speak on more than one thing. And even if you have one topic that is of focus to you, you want to be able to have different angles that you can teach on, new strategies, new processes. And going back to that, it also comes with testing and implementing things in your own business first. If you are not trying new things, how are you ever going to be able to share something new with others in your industry? It's going to be very difficult, because if here you are doing the same old thing over and over again and never stepping out of your comfort zone, you're never going to find something that is worth sharing with the rest of your audience or someone else's audience. So the coaching that I have invested in over the years has absolutely been a huge benefit to me from that relationships standpoint, not just the things I've been able to learn from them and the things that I've done because they've encouraged me to, that I probably wouldn't have tried if I had been left up to my own devices, but their belief in me and their trust in me is allowing them to then confidently refer me to other people, knowing that, hey, their name is on the line. If they refer me to someone and I fall through, or if I don't show up, or if I, don't meet a deadline, or I can't deliver a great presentation, that is going to come back to them. And people aren't willing to do that unless they truly trust you and they see what you can do. So if you are in a coaching program, you want to show up. You want to get to know that coach. You want to show that coach that you are willing to do whatever it takes to grow your business. You want to share with them the things that are working. You want to take their direction. You want to make sure that they know that you are someone that's trustworthy, someone that's credible, someone that is actually worthy of being referred to a big speaking event or engagement. So the next thing I would say is really the communication aspect. So you can be the best in the world at what you do, but if you can't communicate effectively with other people and teach them and break down larger concepts and walk them through steps and simplify some of the processes, you're never going to be offered higher profile speaking gigs or podcasts or video interviews, because it's not just about what you're doing. It's about how you're sharing the information relating to what you're doing. All of these types of events and engagements, they're about teaching other people. They're not just about sharing your story. You're supposed to leave the audience with actionable things that they can implement in their own lives or in their own businesses. So really working from the concept of frameworks, building your own frameworks. A framework is something that can be repeated by others. Even if the ingredients you're throwing into the recipe are different, they can still follow a similar recipe to likely get a similar, if not the same, type of outcome. So if you don't feel like you can effectively communicate things with people to show them how to do what you've been able to do, you really need to take some time to sit down and say, hey, how can I create a framework of this type of information that would allow me to teach someone else? Part of that also goes back to creating things like that for your own team and for your own business. If you can't even teach someone on your own team how to do something, how do you expect to be able to teach someone else that you don't even know and you've never had a personal conversation with? How can you teach them how to do what it is you're doing? So really, it's about practicing what you preach. If you expect to speak on stages and get really big opportunities, you need to do the legwork of not only creating the content, but having content that's worthy of sharing based on the fact that it can actually help someone else achieve a similar outcome. There are too many people out there that really feel that the information in their business and the knowledge that they have should be really hush hush, and that they don't want to share it with other people because then those other people might start doing the same thing and it may take revenue away from their business. So you can't have that mindset. You really have to have a teaching and a sharing mindset because there is more than enough business to go around for everyone. It does not matter if you do the exact same thing as someone else. I can guarantee you that you will never acquire all the business that is to be had within what you do. And that's because sometimes people pick who they work with based on personality, or they pick who they work with based on price point, or they pick who they work with based on the systems and the way that you implement them or the way that you teach. And no two people are going to have everything the same. So you need to be willing to share those things and have this mindset of abundance where you're not so concerned about keeping your secrets to yourself that you're missing out on huge opportunities to share that would ultimately grow your audience and grow your revenue. The other thing relating to the communication is that I ask for what I want. I've always been a person who operates from the phrase or the notion that you don't get what you don't ask for. And this really goes all the way back into my early 20s in some of my very first career opportunities. If I wanted something, I would ask for what I wanted. Because the truth is, people are not mind readers. They don't know what it is you're looking for. Sometimes the thought may have never even crossed their mind. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there. Tell people what it is you're looking for. And then if they need that thing in the future, or if they feel like it's a great idea, they're going to say, yeah, let's give it a try. Let's see. So again, it is not to say that you just want to ask anyone you just met or that you just started a conversation with for them to do something for you. You have to establish relationships first. And if you do that, people are going to be more willing to take into consideration what it is you're asking for. So don't be afraid to put it out there. If there's a podcast you want to be on, if there is a YouTube show you want to be on, if there is a stage you want to be on, you need to find out who the people are who make those decisions. You need to connect with them. You want to start building relationships with them, and you want to put it out there and say, hey, I would love to be a guest or a speaker or, somebody that's contributing on X, Y, and Z topics. Let me know if there's ever any availability for that. Let me know if that's something that you're looking for. I personally feel like when I get messages from third parties, especially, and I believe in PR, so I think PR is very valuable, but when I get a lot of messages from like these third-party companies that don't actually have a relationship with me, so good PR companies, they establish relationships with those people so that, again, they trust you. You are a trusted referral. So if they say, hey, I have a person that would be great on this topic or that would be great to speak on this, you say, okay, I trust your judgment. I'd love to hear from them. So that's what a good PR company is going to do. But ultimately, that's not most of the messages that I get. They're from people that are completely unknown to me. We have no relationship, and they're pitching someone else that's totally random. So if this third party's unknown and the individual is unknown to me, I would rather hear from the individual again and start a personal relationship. It really doesn't boost your credibility to have some random person pitching you instead of you taking the initiative to form those relationships. So again, stop it with the copy and paste messages. Stop it with the copy and paste emails. Have some creativity. Be willing to put in the legwork of actually starting and holding a conversation and building relationships with people, asking for what you want, putting out content that is of value to an audience so somebody can see without even having to talk to you that this is a person who cares about educating. This is a person who cares about helping others. And ultimately, that's the most important thing for any speaker or guest or someone who's participating in an event. They want you to desire to help other people through the content and what you're sharing. So these opportunities have all been able to snowball, but it was not without effort and intentional effort on my part. I knew that one of the best ways to grow my audience and expand my audience was to leverage the audience that other people had already built and to leverage the credibility that they had with their audience. So I could only do this if I was in fact a credible person who had real results, who had content that would share those frameworks with other people. But this was something that I set out to do very intentionally, and it has been instrumental in growing my business. You can do the same thing, and I promise you it's as easy as following the steps and the advice that I've shared in this episode today. So if you are looking to really get your name out there on a larger scale, to reach more people, to allow people to get to know you and your content and your work without ever having personally spoken to you before, this is the best way to do it. So make sure you're focusing on content first, even if you don't have an audience. Relationship building, genuine relationship building, investing in coaches and people who will introduce you to the connections they already have and that will put their credibility on the line to push you out there and get your name out there and to be someone who's going to confidently refer you. Also be able to clearly communicate things of value by really taking a look at what it is you know, what it is you provide, what you can do, and saying, what is a framework that I can take from this that will allow other people to do the same things? And also communicating what you want, planting the seed, making it known that you would love an opportunity for X, Y, and Z, and then again, continuing those relationships, even if they don't automatically say, yes, we'd love to have you do this. Because if you just disappear as soon as they say, hey, well, maybe we'll see how it goes, it's very obvious that the only reason you were ever engaging with them was because you wanted a personal benefit. So start thinking about others, serving others with the content you're sharing, and building relationships with the people that you really want to be connected with. And I promise you, amazing things will happen. So hopefully this has been helpful. And I would really encourage you guys to all start using something like the Dream 100 strategy to put this into action. Several of my students have actually taken my advice on the Dream 100 strategy, put it into action, and now one of them has a fellow 2 Comma Club award winner as a business partner, something that she never in a million years really assumed would happen. But because of this strategy and actually implementing this, she is able to build those relationships and now is actually in business with somebody that she really admires. So that's a great way to get started on this. There are other episodes that talk about that strategy, and I'll definitely probably do another one on Dream 100 in the future because it is so critically important. But there you go. That's it. Use this framework and take action in your own life and your own business. Thanks so much for being with me today. God bless.